Well, my point with my dog here who gave me the bone is I just started an article this morning about the difference between fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence. And my understanding is the fluid is something that we have more of up until maybe our 40s. And we're fast, we can process more quickly, we can pivot more quickly, learn faster versus the crystallized intelligence comes, I think of it more as wisdom, discernment, and comes from judgment, inexperience, those types of things. And my premise that I'm writing about now is, oh, you think you're so smarty pants with your fast thinking. Congratulations, you've just been outplaced by AI. And then making the premise that that's great. And I love the point that Josh just surfaced is that this somehow has something more to do, I think I can make it with the thinking and the thoughting, that the fluid intelligence that's fast if we're using AI as an example, it's more of what's already there in the ether, and it's not elevating, reconciling, or innovating anything new, evolving the thinking. It's maybe organizing it. So I'd
So there's
love to hear any thoughts
there's
from you.
two other aspects of our work that are coming up in what you're talking about, and I think this totally aligns with what Josh brought in. So there's this notion of knowledge versus understanding,
Hmm.
right? And we use a lot of our technologies to generate understanding, right? It's not necessarily about knowledge. And the other element that comes up for me is AI, as I think is directly related to thinking and thoughting, right? AI exists within the realm of existence. Technically, it
Mm.
kind of doesn't exist within the realm of potential, right? Or maybe I should put that in the form of, does it exist in the realm of potential
Mm.
at all? Or right? Are there any? So those are the two elements: knowledge, understanding, existence, and potential that are coming up.
Lovely.
And I'll just add a comment that I heard Pamela say a couple of weeks ago was education is about knowledge and development is about bringing something new into existence, just to sort of reinforce that.
Education, say that again. Education is about knowledge?
Yeah, educate. So we were talking about education versus development, sort of the language we use. And she was saying, and she said it came from someone, but I couldn't remember who, whether it was Charlie or not. But education is about knowledge, like sort of passing on knowledge or like giving knowledge or teaching knowledge, whereas development is about
Hmm.
developing or enhancing our capabilities to bring something new into existence.
I
I
would
like
say
the
that
idea. I'm not sure I agree with those like the words, the semantics. I'm remembering, I think it's in Carol's book, Regenerative Life.
Mm.
I think I highlighted it in, the word educare, Latin or Italian or something. It means to pull out and
Mm.
of someone. Seems like development to me. I think she used said a new way that I hadn't known about in that, I think it was in that book. She said used a French version definition, and it meant to unveil, like, to take
Mm.
so that
That's
you see.
development, yeah,
Yeah.
devail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is it seems very close to development. And I would
So,
use the word training is more of the um, knowledge.
although, I think there's the original definition of education, which I try to put into practice, right? But I think culturally, the way education is practiced, it is a cramming in. It's not a
Yeah.
pulling out, right?
For the
So
test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so there's definitions, and then there's how does it, right? How does it engage culturally in practice? And I think they're,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons we use that original definition, because we're trying to point out that the way education is practiced isn't really, education as it originally was intended.
Yeah, that's a good distinction. That's what I was thinking too. Thanks, Francis, too, for that.
Yeah, I just saw that and didn't realize it. It was when you mentioned it, I'm like, really? Is it really to pull out? And then just found that and it said awaken inherent potential. Isn't that what we do here?
Mm.
But I think we're saying there are different schools, and some schools just teach to pass the test
Yeah.
versus really draw out the wisdom that is developmental. There could be some schools, whether it's Montessori or the Waldorf type of education, that does that, but it's not common in public, I think.
Yeah. Especially at older ages, right?
Elena, you're trying to jump in.
No, I was just
Great,
it's been covered now because definitely the university I teach at is doing the developmental aspect of like it's very much about pulling out something from each student and trying just completely just always reinforcing and finding and nurturing that talent and that potential in each and every individual student. So I mean, some schools do it, but it's far and few between. So I think everything is true about this. And I think for earlier stages, it's more difficult. And I know the US has a lot of trouble. It's a big country. There's a lot of standardized testing that just adheres schools to this very specific curriculum, and then it becomes rote learning. It's terrible, multiple choice. It's just like how is that gonna help any creative thinking, critical thinking whatsoever? And if you then look at how glued young people are to their phones and social media and how they just disappear. I mean, what does that do to food intelligence? It's going to speed it out of control because all they do is consume. They just intake. They don't think, they don't do, they don't develop themselves or anything that they want to work on. It's always they just take. So what is that going to do to a young intelligence? And is that going to speed up this also reliance on then AI to do any sort of potential even critical thinking for them? They're connecting the dots for them. So there's a very slippery slope of addiction into this world. I think it's a fascinating concept and topic that you've chosen, and super important. And yeah, my friends who are parents to like teenagers now, they're like all pulling their hair out, being so extraordinarily frustrated and trying to pull the kids away from their addictive behavior. They're all parents to addicts, all of them, and we're like, what are we gonna do? Throw them in the ocean. Let's do what are we gonna how are we going to get them out of this? So yeah, get them to and I struggle. So my students are in their 20s. Oh boy, they have the same issues in terms of they just focus on you have to now solve a problem. You sit down for 60 minutes. I'm going to put a timer on. I'm going to shut you in that room. And you're not going to come out until you've sat with this one problem for 1 hour. And they're like, they're going crazy. They can't do it. Their brains are going all over the place. And within 5 minutes, they're looking for dopamine. And so it's just, anyway, that was just a little injection.
Janet, I'd like to offer another question from hopefully a regenerative lens. We talk about in regenerative practice about identifying patterns as an important way in development, and I'm trying to think about whether patterns are something that happens with both types of intelligence, both fluid and crystallized, or is that something that you get better at? Or is this just an entirely different scale that doesn't add anything to, kind of the differences you're trying to identify?
I'm thinking that in terms of patterns, I don't know if I have a master's in education, so it's coming back to me from this conversation. Howard Gardner talked about multiple intelligences. And then he had 7, then he found another one, maybe he's even more, but that was years ago, decades when I was studying. But pattern intelligence, he used a different word, but it was when I presented this in business, the engineers said that if they could discern patterns from their work, it made them more valuable in their work. And I'm wondering if there is even another lens to look at this patterns, and is it existing patterns that are already there and now I see them? Or is it in the term Joel has, I've heard him use, I think, is it in Carol, there's pattern following and pattern generating. And so the following is pattern following is someone is in front of me and they've walked on the path and I'm following in their pattern on the path, versus pattern generating, I think, is we don't even know it's a trend or a trend yet. And that is the implicate intersection of woo, I think. I don't know if I'm making sense anymore,
Yeah.
but I'll stop there and see if that stirred up anything.
We also know that we're guilty of seeing patterns that are not there.
Hmm.
Saying, this older man and younger woman were having lunch together, what's going on? And
Yeah.
people will see anything from, a strange relationship to a boss and an employee to a father and a daughter, or,
Yeah.
depending on what pattern that they see. And I don't know whether maybe in fluidity, you see pattern, you tend to jump to patterns, and say, yes, I understand what's happening there from just a little bit of evidence. And, once you crystallize, you're skeptical of at least your first reaction.
Because we've fallen for it earlier in our lives.
Right. So, I mean, we are, either following a pattern because we've always followed that pattern. It's all based on whatever. Or, we, see a pattern that wasn't there before, or look for that pattern. Kind of like watching your thinking is, why did I naturally assume that this is what I'm seeing? I saw this pattern. What's pushing me to see this particular pattern where there are other patterns that may be occurring. Or some scientists say there's a pattern there, we just haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah. There's a level of consciousness. I'm aware of, I'm just kind of following this rote pattern. But I'm thinking, and I hate always using like Steve Jobs, who created the iPhone, to be able to understand what's going around. Well, people have their computer and they have their music and they have the phone, and to discern in the field something new. He generated a pattern that every other company now follows.
I'd say he generated a product. The idea had been around for decades before Steve Jobs, that people would eventually be walking around with a computer in their pocket. Right? So he didn't originate that idea, right? But but what he was is he was able to manifest that idea into reality, right?
Yeah.
The thing that's coming up for me and what you're talking about there about pattern generating is VVE as a way to test, right? Whether
Vitality, viability, and evolution.
yeah, it's that evolutionary capacity, right, is kind of akin to pattern generating, right? And a way to test this is what I'm trying to do in whatever role I'm playing, right? Generating higher orders of vitality and viability and additional evolutionary capacity in the system within I'm working. So I think it's a way to test whether am I generating a healthy pattern or am I generating a degenerating pattern, or right, what, right? I think it's a way to start to look at it and relationally.
I think I could use that to make a distinction about thoughting and thinking.
Hmm.
That if you're really thinking versus thoughting, it would have those characteristics.
Yeah. I mean, it's a question I've been asking myself a lot lately is, okay, you come up with these premises and ideas. Well, how do you test them? Right? How do you evaluate them? How do you discern whether, right? And I think in many ways, a lot of the frameworks can be really useful for that.
I have a question about, so what is the, it's just inspired by what you were saying, Marcus, because what can the fluid intelligence and the crystalline intelligence learn from each other? Like, how are they actually a complementary thing? Like, is there, because crystalline can be like also perceived as being stuck, whereas the other one can be perceived as being the one that's moving, if you look at it from that energy perspective of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Janet, are you familiar with the differentiating intelligences framework? Charlie Crohn's, the different kinds of intelligences.
I don't remember, say more, maybe.
I'll just share and show you.
Yeah.
So if you took the systematics course, it was
I
in the
did.
last session
It was
of the
probably in there with
systematics course, and
you.
I remember it because that was the last one I took most recently. So that's the tetrad,
Oh.
right? So different kinds of intelligences and their relationships. And it's interesting when you map it on the tetrad, what they're useful for, right? Because that quote I put in there was from here. It's about intelligence is about being able to see value adding processes in motion, right? So that you can then discern what's the greater potential. And that is, right, a foundational aspect, I think, of what we're trying to do in a regenerative practice. And one of the hardest things I think we're trying to do, right, is actually being able to see these things, especially in a relatively complex process like the value adding process.
I took that with you a couple of years ago. I think you might have repeated it. I don't know.
did. This was my second time around.
I'm gonna go look and see. Yeah, because
Yeah.
you could do it if you, and if
Yeah, there's a few pages that in the middle of this somewhere, I think, on structural intelligence and frameworks, and yeah, there's a few pages about.
But yeah, I mean, I think, is it Aileen, who was just, I think I don't want to discount fluid intelligence. I wish I had more of it. I think, though, that has been higher valued, at least in corporate, and I'm worked in HR and in talent management, where we would, assess people and, oh, they're really smart and strategic, all this. But I'm now realizing that,
Is that what they're referring to maybe as associative intelligence,
hmm,
which is at the goal point of this,
yeah,
maybe?
Right.
So that is about visualizing the energies at play, right?
yeah.
Toss in another question on intelligence. How much does it have to do with the culture
Yeah.
that we're talking about, or maybe the place, but certainly the culture, certainly Western versus Eastern? We tend to be biased toward Western, and maybe does not occur in the cultures that certain folks are brought up in. And the other thing that comes to mind is generational. I mean, certainly the traumas or experiences or affluence or privilege that certain generations may have over others, does that affect, when you might be going from fluid to crystalline or something as well? I have a sister who was born in the mid-60s and has been extremely successful, and she attributes to the fact that she was neither a baby boomer or Gen X, and she talked to both, and therefore she, rose very high in the corporate ladder because she had a certain intelligence that those that were stuck in one of those generations couldn't understand from the other. And so I just kind of wonder whether there's, you know, uh, kind of a bias in this whole discussion, um, at least from what culture we come from, and I think we've got a variety of ages here, but that may be affecting it.
Well, my understanding is it's more of a biological capacity. But the way you described it I thought of your sister had more emotional intelligence and more of that maybe, yeah, I don't want
Yeah, and
to stumble to little.
and we've been hearing that people who have gone through generational trauma, you can actually, I forget all the fancy words for, what you can see on their neurons, but that they carry it through, that it's not just, is it biologically similar as we are? There are enough to differentiate us, that can affect intelligence and emotions. I don't know. It's just another lens.
I think to summarize, I like the ideas you've surfaced, and I can easily see the potential and existence and how we see that with AI is only able to capture, at least in my understanding, what is existing in the internet and putting it together. And then maybe a lens or criteria, I'm not sure if that's the right word, would be, is this off the thinking, quality of the thinking, or quality of the intelligence in this case, offering more vitality, viability, and evolution. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first thing that came up for me in order to test this, but I'm wondering are there other ways to test this? How do you test these things, right? So the whole 2 rules of the school, right? Don't accept or reject anything. So how do you examine it?
And what's the cutoff point? Like, at what point does you're saying it's biological, right? So is there an age where it starts to
40-ish, actually.
40-ish? Yeah.
Yeah.
I should
Jeez,
point
I
out
actually had
that
it. Sorry, no, I just want to say this one thing,
please.
because it's funny. Sorry, it's real quick. I had a student saying to me that my brain had crystallized and I was like stuck and whatever. And then I'm looking at this young dude and he's 21 and say, well, come back to me when your frontal cortex has actually developed and you're aware of the consequences of what you're saying and doing. And then
Yes.
the whole room just went, oh, okay. Maybe we can learn a thing or two from this one.
Good for you.
It's just so funny. But yeah, so 40-ish, yeah. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, Josh. I just wanted to.
Yeah, just to point out, and again, I can draw family in. AI is capable of discerning future patterns. And there's a company that my son-in-law recently sold. It's called Recorded Future, where all of it is using AI to predict future events.
Oh,
And I forget, MasterCard bought it for billions of dollars. So
Oh,
So it's, I assume the way it would work it would look at past patterns and then it would extrapolate, just
Yeah.
like you do with data, extrapolate
yeah,
extrapolate out in the
it's
future, right?
I mean, there's a lot he couldn't tell me about what it does, but it
Right.
was
That's interesting.
certainly.
But I think that's, so is that pattern recognition or is it actual pattern generating, right? What Janet was talking about earlier.
Yeah, it's like
I know very little about AI, so.
it's like when you have AI finish the symphonies of some of the composers that never, lived to
Mm.
do it. And the question is, did they finish the symphony based on his past patterns? Or would the composer have looked at it and said, no, I need to, I need another third symphony or another fifth symphony, that breaks all the patterns and all of that, and goes to the next pattern.
mm,
I mean, they're just guesses. I mean,
Right.
it's just like human pattern, whatever. We generate something, we project something to the future. It's our best guess based on whatever data we have. We think creatively about it, and I think AI is learning to do one of the same, but it's just like one out of four outputs from ChatGPT is actually wrong. So it's we're still in that, we still need to check things.
Yeah.
And I think data analysis has done this for decades already. It's just a different output now. It's way more, the resolution of the output is way higher and people can broadly understand it more. You don't need to be a data analyst to actually understand what comes out of these predictions. So it's different in that sense, I guess.
And of course, the
Stock market does
predictions,
that every day, right?
Yeah.
the
They're all based on
predictions,
projections, right?
yeah, and the predictions actually affect the outcome.
Right,
The
right,
credible source,
exactly.
you think it's right and therefore it happens, or if you don't like that source or it came from the wrong political party, then you do what you can to break that pattern.
Yeah, I mean, the emotion is such a huge factor in our intelligence and our decision making and
mhm.
all of that. And right, so I don't know what work, I'm sure there's work being done on AI around emotional intelligence and right, the effect of
Yeah.
emotions on all of it. But
But look at something like the fashion industry. Like for decades, those who really ruled there were well, obviously designers, but the trend scouts, those who made the books for the next season. Those were the ones who really
Right.
steered the whole market, it's like billion-dollar industry, right? And that was all based on some people putting together a book that was very secret and given to these fashion houses. And then that predicted the next seasons. And that was very based on emotion, desirability, all that. But instead, so it was a very curated prediction in the sense that it actually then made the market because it made that thing desirable, because then the designers would, they made that whole, like you were just saying, like the narrative. It made that narrative very clear of why people will want that. And it was kind of taking in, okay, a little bit of this, it points in that direction. And we have this political thing going on, there's this cultural thing going on. And then what we saw last season, and there's a movement, so it's going to go in this direction. These are going to be the colors, these are going to be the materials, go. And then that really, so it can be very manipulated with, and it's very emotional. And I think that's just how we humans, we're just like, the next shiny thing or whatever, we're easily swayed. Again, it's not getting any better now these days. So yeah.
And what I'm curious about now and what you're saying is, how does the observer effect work within what AI generates? Right. I think it's pointing to what you're saying there, right? Is it's you don't, the observer has an impact, or whoever's spinning the narrative has a huge impact
Yeah.
on the outcome, right? Physics tells us that. So yeah, I put I love that quote from Tyson that I put in the chat there, right? So
Yeah.
it's those it's the narratives that you need to pay attention to, right? Because you can make it, often you can make the data say whatever the hell you want.
Yeah. No, you need to be able to craft that output. And I think this is what AI really does so well, because the resolution is to that level of the good old trend scouts that were able to design a whole new season. Or to your point, like Josh, or I'm sure that's part of it, why that company was sold so successfully is because they were able to produce something that was really great.
Yeah, actually, I think, and I recall their success was they were able to predict threats, cyber attack threats.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, we just in Denmark, there was like the drones everywhere. All of Denmark is topsy-turvy. There's Russia has invaded Denmark. So it's yeah, it's very real. It's going on. It's happening. People are freaking out. So I'm just hiding in Spain.
I'm still wrestling with Marcus's question about how do we test this
Yeah.
in a way that doesn't skew the results.
Right. Or do you assume it's automatically going to skew the results? Right? I think that's what the observer effect tells us. No matter what we do, we're going to skew the results. But
Yeah.
can we, right? I don't know, somehow account for that, or right? That's the idea of the, the triple blind and the whole scientific method stuff.
Yeah.
That
Do we
Or-
decide beforehand if the cat is dead or alive?
Yeah.
do we
Like,
do we just take it into account that, right, we're
Yeah.
not going to be able to objectively observe anything, and then what are the implications of that?
Or like those great movies where there's this invisible hand,
Yeah.
or this conspiracy theorist that say there's something going on here that you don't even understand.
yeah. Yeah, that's a hook. Yeah.
So we got a few minutes left. I'm curious, what's going through your mind, Debbie and Francis, since you've been, at least in the last half, relatively quiet here. And
I was just kind of, I mean, it went over my head. I was like literally just going online and looking at the different meetings. And then when Aline went off to make her comment about the student, right before that, I was looking at a diagram on where the different of intelligent levels of intelligence or types of intelligence were coming from in the brain. So and you had, and I was going to say, Janet mentioned, I thought it was biological, so I was kind of comparing all of those different nodes together. But really trying to understand, because I had not actually gone into it or heard of it before, so I was just really trying to kind of understand the differences online as you all were all speaking. So
anything come out of that? Or are you still processing?
no, I'm still processing.
Okay,
It's
fair
over my head.
Or in your head.
Still trying to figure out. It's like it's way over my head. I'm like, sometimes it becomes a little too much.
Sure.
But no, it was good to learn, go into that. And I was like, okay, well, wait a minute. So I feel like I just have to go deeper. And I enjoyed seeing your diagram too. I was like, oh, I haven't taken this class. That would kind of help me understand a lot of things. I read a couple of things.
Yeah.
It's a great course for overall context on the structural nature of frameworks and how they all fit together. And yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the systematics?
Yep.
Yeah.
So good.
I learned that it's
for now.
I learned that it's
Yeah.
Francis.
That's okay.
I learned it's really hard for me to try and walk on a treadmill and think deeply at the same time.
Yeah, I would
And then
think
I have to stop. Like I've had to stop it now to actually think. I'm like, I can listen, but then I'm like, oh, now I need to process and.
My mom would say you
Right.
can't walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a scary
it's
thing.
not worth hurting yourself.
Should we have a rule that you have to turn off Google search when you're in these meetings?
Yeah.
No, I was kind of, what was said about, people needing to get access to information because it's so easy to do that,
Yeah.
it's harder to be present.
Back to this present, or which is Debbie just said triggered this for me, is recently I was talking to someone and he speaks like 5 different languages. And then I said, oh, well, I speak Spanish. I said, but what's interesting? And I'm only intermediate. I'm not, it's totally fluent. I said, I watch Spanish telenovelas every day. I'm glued to this. I have to put my VPN on Spain so I can still watch it.
Oh my God. I can never
And
believe.
so, and I can follow it pretty well. But what I realized, because I've been here in the US all summer long, is I'm not speaking Spanish as fluently, as quickly, as easily as when I'm in Spain and I'm there and I'm talking. And so there's something about understanding, watching TV. It's like I said, it's consuming the knowledge, but I'm not putting out knowledge. There's something here that reminds me of the thinking, the thoughting, and all of
Yeah.
that. And I've slipped in my ability of the language because I'm just consuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
That
same
And
would
thing
I was
help.
happens
just
with regenerative
consuming.
practice,
I was
right?
just consuming when I was walking on the treadmill.
Right, right.
Makes
The
total
same thing
sense
happens
though.
with regenerative practice, right? If you don't put it into practice,
Yeah.
and just the 10 classes or even these kinds of conversations, right? It just doesn't sink in at the same level.
Mm.
No, and that was my whole point before as well.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you
Yeah.
just gotta commit to the hard work of doing something, and it is uncomfortable because it actually feels hard to do. You know, like sitting in that room for 60 minutes till you come out with something on this thing that you're trying to focus on. It's
But
just hardly ever done, you know.
it's
And
just
but
not
yeah,
done
Mm.
anymore. It used
Yeah.
to be done. I mean, I was raised
Yeah.
that way, and it still
yeah,
feels good to kind of do it and go
that's
through the
great.
process.
Yeah,
Mm.
It's kind of sad that they're trying to make it so easy for us, and you end up getting hooked because things are just so much easier. I plop something into AI, and
Yeah.
wow, I used to write pretty decent before. Now I have to rely on this machine.
yeah, yeah,
Or machine. I don't even know if I should call it
Yeah. No,
machine.
you don't though, because it's so generic, right? You just everything just screams AI when I read this stuff now.
yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is AI generated. There's no voice. There's yeah, it's just
You
very
think though? I depends on. I've read some things that I know. I mean, like I will write my general ideas and then I will take them into AI or like what I want to say, and then I'll take it into AI or ask for it, and then it still feels to me like it has a soul depending on what it is that is being written. No, and reading from other people, some things I can definitely tell, but others I do feel like there's a personal, like there's a heart somewhere in there that somebody put into it. But I think it depends, not all the time. I don't know.
Well,
yeah.
behind everything that was written by a human, there's a heart.
Yeah,
So,
well, but
so
how
maybe
how
it's
much,
kind of a collective heart as opposed to any
Mm.
sort of individual heart.
but how much thought how much thinking did you put into what you wanted to express? I mean, was it just a writing of something and then send out, okay, right, this is the context, this is what I want to
Yeah.
say, this is what I want to expose, and just improve this for me.
Hmm.
Because that's still
Well, what's it going to use to make the improvement is the question, right?
Mm.
Right. So my understanding with AI, you can get specific, right? As long as, so if I wanted to ask AI to write something on this subject in my style,
Mm.
right? I could, and I have enough stuff that it could access, right?
Yeah.
It could probably do that. It's just like
Well, that's
asking
what
it,
they do. That's
produce a piece of art in the Picasso style,
Mm.
right? And it can do that.
Yeah, and that's what they train you in. One of these classes that I took, they're like, ask it to be an expert in whatever, you're looking to. So you are an expert in, whatever area, and you're trained to do so. It's just all about the prompting and how you put it out there.
Exactly.
It's still, at the end of the day, the point is that it's still not allowing us to, or if we use it and it just becomes more addictive as you do, the critical thinking skills are
Mm.
gone.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Right.
the only thing, it's just important
Yeah.
just to be able to connect
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
your own, like your connection with whatever potential might be in front of you. And if you lose that connection because you lose your practice
Mm.
of doing that, then that's the trouble, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Because AI is just a tool.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So It's just
I
a matter
thought-
of how we stay sentient along, you know,
Along with the
the
process.
process. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw a stand-up comic like Instagram post the other day, and I think I might have saved it, but it was really about a woman saying, we had something back in my day that was called critical thinking. And it was she just went off on a full comedy show about, you know, how in our generation that was still a tool that was used and it's not found anywhere anymore. And like it was
Yeah.
pretty good to see.
No, I mean, it's literally a class that I teach. It's called critical thinking. They
Okay.
want that to be taught at university now. I'm
Oh.
like, really?
It
Okay,
should
let's
though.
do it. But really,
But you
you
know,
need that?
but you know what? I think it
Mm.
was taught when I was in the university that was taught. There was a class I have taken critical
Oh,
thinking.
really?
It's just yeah, back I
Interesting.
mean that was 20 something years ago.
Ah, well, for me, it was all growing up. It was always like in Scandinavia, multiple choice questionnaires doesn't exist. It's always an essay. You have to always
Okay.
think, write about something, solve a problem. So it was just critical thinking. What you mean thinking? Oh, so it's
Yeah.
just, yeah.
Yeah, no, we did have it in my school. And I was never the best in multiple choice, but I was always good in essays. So
There you go.
good memories.
Janet, how about you? What are you thinking now?
Oh, I'm excited to put this all together. I'll make sure I tell you all when
Please.
Mm.
how it's like I have to go back to the drawing board for the writing. But thank you.
Good. We
It's
have
been-
achieved our outcome then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do I save the chat?
Our work here is done, right?
What was that again?
How do I save the chat? I forget.
Oh, I don't know.
Save chat.
Hold on.
Open it,
Save
top
chat,
three
in
buttons.
the top, up in the
Yeah.
top corner.
Save chat. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then I paste it somewhere now that I saved it.
It should tell you, it should come up as show in folder, and then you can open the folder. It'll save it like in your notes, I think.
Yeah.
And then it'll just have it open the folder, and then you can copy
I
paste it.
see it. Now I see it. Yeah. Great.
Could have asked ChatGPT how to do that, Janet.
That's right.
That
If it's the fourth time.
You all have a good weekend.
Thank
Always
you.
fun.
Take
See you
care.
next
Thanks all.
week.
Thanks for
Thank
bringing
you.
that
Very good.
subject,
Good to
Janet.
see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.